Hello and welcome back to All Things Money. I'm your host, David Blain. Thank you for joining us today for our final segment of the show. If you missed the first couple, it's kind of a series today. We're doing the whole show on sort of a mental side of investing and why people with a really severe gloom and doom attitude never are very successful at investing, that you have to look beyond some of the headlines and you have to have some sort of positive outlook for the future of humanity, or some at least base belief in capitalism and that society will continue to move forward. So if you missed the first couple of shows, we'll try to make this a standalone segment, but please go over to the website, dlblain.com. There you can find archived copies of the show and kind of catch up. So we're talking about how the gloom and doom scenario and the world collapsing scenarios really have an effect on people. If they have effect on people, they're really detrimental to the portfolio. That to be a good investor, you have to be able to look beyond some of these headlines. And we gave some examples of a lot of the disastrous things that people thought were going to happen that never came to pass. And, I don't know if you remember back in 1974, I was a kid back then, but I do remember this, the oil crisis and things like that. And I remember the President Jimmy Carter was saying that in the 70s, he said that we were going to use up all the proven oil reserves in the world in the next decade. And I graduated from high school in 1984, and so that was, by the time I graduated high school, all the oil in the world was going to be used up. And in 1970, according to some statistics, the world had about 550 billion barrels of proven reserves. Between 1970 and 90, we actually used 600 billion. So theoretically, we already should have run out of oil. Of course, that didn't happen. And the actual U.S. crude production is expected to exceed Saudi Arabia's by the year 2015. Now, I know some people are all for alternative energy and those type of things, and that's fine. I am too. But the reality is the world, what we're talking about here is the gloom and doom scenario that, we're going to run out of oil, or, we're going to run out of food, or things like that. And within 3 to 5 years, the U.S. will become the world's largest exporter of natural gas. So once again, there can be a policy discussion of whether we want that to be the case. But what I'm talking about here is not adopting the view that the world is going to come to a crashing halt because we're going to run out of one of these particular natural resources. Now, you can have a desire to move towards a different energy source. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's having an outlook that is somewhat positive. You'll see a positive effect of that. You see a lot of job growth in the U.S., both from oil as well from natural gas. I guess maybe you still hear it today, but this whole concept of outsourcing jobs, that all of a sudden we're going to wake up one day in the United States and there's going to be no jobs here because they're all going to be done by people living in India or China or something like that. And that's just not the case. In fact, we see that the trend is actually reversing due to the oil that we've discovered, the energy, our resurgence in energy dominance of the U.S., number one. Number two, the people over there are basically tired of not getting paid any money. And through things like the internet and things, they see that they don't have to live on $3 a day, and so they're sort of demanding more wages, and it's making the U.S. more and more competitive. And so we see we see different changes that come about. And one of the mistakes that the human mind tends to make is what I call the extrapolation effect. And it could be either up, people. Investors have a tendency to do this, that, if they invest, it's going to go sort of straight up. At the same time, people have an extrapolation tendency straight down. People tend to see things in a linear fashion. They see trends. That's kind of the way the mind is wired, and it just does not happen that way. And so if you have, oil consumption going up, to make a prediction about what it's going to be in the year 2050 or something like that, you just can't extrapolate it. I was reading something the other day. I can't remember the name of it, but it's this new substance. It's developed from graphite, and this is things that you look at that are going to be game changers. It's developed from graphite, which graphite is one of the stuff in your pencil lead, and they're able to develop it 1 atom thick. I mean, this is fascinating. You need to look this up. The way they discovered it, you think of these professors in the universities, these PhDs, things like that. They discovered it, and the way that they initially were working with it was with a piece of Scotch tape on actual graphite pencils. Anyway, it's a great story. But the point is that they can develop this stuff. It's 1 atom thick. It's stronger than steel. All right, 1 atom thick, stronger than steel. It conducts electricity better than silicon, which all your computer chips, or most of them, are made out of silicon or sand. Well, this new substance conducts better than silicon and is stronger than steel. And so they're already making, like they have a keyboard that's a piece of paper that you can fold up and put it in your pocket and then unfold it, and it's a keyboard. And so, as they continue to develop uses, and actually the article was on the race to patent everything. I mean, people are just filing all sorts of patents using this stuff because they see the great potential of it. But in theory, you take today's iPad, in the future, it could be a piece of paper thick, and you could fold it up and put it in your pocket, the entire iPad. And so the uses for energy or technology, they're already making, thin film solar panels that, could be built into the roof of your house instead of these unsightly, glass solar panels. It's just sort of part of the roofing material of your house. Things like that. As technology continues to develop, you're going to see some of these innovations work their way into portfolios. So in kind of summary, what we're encouraging you to do is, when you're adopt somewhat of a positive outlook. It doesn't mean you have to stick your head in the sand and not be concerned about the issues of the day or not focus on solution. We need to find solutions to these problems, but it means, as an investor, don't get caught up in this huge gloom and doom that the world's going to come to an end, because it's very detrimental to your portfolio. Okay, well, that's about all the time we have for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I think it's a very important topic, and if you have any other questions on that, please get a hold of us. So for All Things Money, I'm your host, David Blain. I hope you will join us again next week.
The proceeding was a paid program. The opinions expressed are not necessarily those of WNBU and Inner Banks Media.